Hello and welcome back to the Untriggered Parenting Podcast with me, Paula Sampson Lawrence. On today's episode, I speak with Meral Doe Renee Jones. Meral is an author and today she talks with us about conscious and empowered grief. Let's dive in. So welcome to the show, Meral. It's so lovely to have you here. So if you want to introduce yourself and let our listeners know a little bit more about you.
I would love to do that. Thank you so much for creating space today and awesome sacred space for listening. I am Meral Doe Renee Jones, and I'm in beautiful Pueblo, Colorado. Been in this area for most of my life. I'm a mother of two, Leonidas and Zelda, wife of Garrett, and a community leader in my area, creating regenerative systems for a beautiful future for our planet, starting with the local area. I'm an author, authorship coach, and publisher. I also have the opportunity and blessing to be director of a heritage center and museum locally called the Pueblo Heritage Museum, where we're helping everyone connect to past, present, future, and honoring all cultures and walks of life. And those are the hats I wear and who I am really, and who I am in this life, and what I'm a stand for is, as a parent, just a world where we're able to let vulnerability lead the way and authenticity be just a commonplace versus something that is sticks out and just is a natural part of our beingness, such that young people never have to forget that part of themselves and remember it, because I do think that young people have that naturally and that we all do. I was a teacher as well in my life, and my background, originally my educational background was engineering, and went through the whole school life and loved it for the most part, and also see that there's huge opportunity for us to really up level how we do things on earth, especially for our young people. So and I'm grateful today to really open my heart and speak from the heart, specifically with parenting with my almost 5-year-old son, and really empowering, growing through him, and with him and alongside him, with what I call beautiful / brutal grief. And that is another beautiful role I get to hold, especially in the authorship spaces I'm a part of, is helping people and myself just alongside them write and empower through grief, especially those that have experienced trauma, tragedy, lost people due to tragic circumstances. And then as it relates to myself, just really honoring the tragedy and trauma and grief we experience when a loved ones of ours passes in their physical body due to suicide. So I'm grateful that you've opened space today. We talked a little bit before and you sent me some questions. And so I'm actually feeling excited to share about it, and hope that someone listening can feel empowered by anything I share.
Oh, I'm really sure they will do. Because like you said, we did connect earlier. And one thing you said that really stood out to me was you said the phrase conscious grief, which I'd never really sort of considered before. So I'd love to hear sort of more about your journey. And because I know there was a tragedy in your past that led you sort of here. And if you could speak a little bit about that and what conscious grief means to you.
Thank you for asking me about that. That phrase has come through recently, and I'm sure I'm not the only one using it, although I didn't see it anywhere before saying that. That's the beauty of our connected consciousness. I think things come through all at the same time. So I'm sure if I go give it a search, I'll find others using it, which I'm really excited about, and I'll see their perspectives on it. And for me, conscious grief is kind of just exactly as the name implies, just really letting it be something that we consciously allow space and healing for, versus kind of as an afterthought. So as a real lived example, some stories that go with that to help answer the question would be, whenever what I call timeline unfoldment or time unfoldment versus anniversary, I use different words and phrases in unique ways. And so when that time comes up every year, for me, one of those dates is September 6th of every year, which is the year that my son's first father and my first husband died by suicide, September 6th, 2020. And so just last year was the first time I really consciously, I was reaching out to my women's support groups I'm a part of, talking to my husband today about it, and my family. I'm like, hey, this is coming up. I'm going to be, these are some things I'm consciously going to be doing. I'm gonna have this cool healing session with a friend, and I'm going to do some writing. I'll have I have a coaching session, and I'm going to bring all this to it and do a little bit of prayer, meditation, and honoring, see if there's any tears, but also not force the tears. And so that was really cool this year to do that. And so this past year in 2023, being able to practice what I guess I would call conscious grief was really powerful, because I had many days leading up to that date and after where I allowed tears to flow, and I allowed anything to flow through, even anger, shame, guilt, sadness, all of it, really seeing it all as just this beautiful tapestry of colors, almost like, versus like the first year after the event. And the loss, I remember just kind of almost dreading it happen, like the date coming, and then just would have, several times where grief was released all at once, whether I wanted to or not. It kind of built up like a dam bursting. And both of those experiences I described just now are perfect the way they are and the way they aren't. There's no right or wrong way, absolutely, to process through this. And I found that it felt much more empowering and transparent and conscious for me to almost like plan it in. So, and with my son, I know we had talked about sharing about that, especially for this podcast. Gosh, it's been such a beautiful, and like my sister says, brutal journey. Being able to honor the beauty and the brutal feelings in all of this, and to beautiful and brutal. And so with Leo is my son's name. It's such a bittersweet blessing, because when his first dad, Clint, died in 2020, we had been separated. We separated when Leo was only 6 months old. There was a lot of challenge there with abuse, and me finally becoming strong enough to admit that. And so 2019 to 2020, we, as much as he was able to with some mental illness he battled, co-parented. And then September 6th, 2020, Leo was just about a year and a half. So I remember when it actually happened. I actually was with my sister. So I found out he passed. And so I didn't see my son until like the next day or so after. And when I got to see him, I first just like held him in my arms, and just explained to him, and he was only 1.5. And so just barely starting to get really verbal, but said, your daddy Clint went to heaven. And so I remember one time, it was actually a video that I chose to record that I put on my pinned on my Instagram. And he just randomly came to me and was like, can we FaceTime Daddy Clint? And he still was like understanding that concept. And I'm like, oh no, well, like we can't FaceTime him, but we can really just like think of him and think of his spirit, and he'll hear us, and we can ask to see if we can meet him in dreams, and just send him our love, because he's always connected to you. And then we talked a bit more, and he started crying a little bit. And this was when he was like 3 or so. I hold him. At this point, I turned on the camera. I was called to capture the moment. And I asked him, like, are you sad that he died? And I was feeling really strong and not crying at all. And so basically he leaned into me and cried more. And I was just comforting him. And then the situation flipped, where he looked up at me, and as I felt him and he felt me, I said, me too, and started letting some emotion flow. And it had been a while at that point, I believe, in that video that I had really let myself feel it. Then it just flipped to where he just kind of looked up at me and it's like kind of shocked and surprised and almost comforting me. And then my daughter too, who was like one or something at the time, or not even one, kind of comes up and she's almost trying to comfort from down on this below the couch. And it just flipped and captioned something I wrote like I was comforting him, and then it flipped to where he was comforting me. And that has been a really powerful thing that I would say is a takeaway for anyone out there who's going through any kind of challenge through parenting with through grief with young people, is that just letting ourselves totally unfold in front of our kids and being like, it's okay, this is okay right now, I'm feeling this and it will pass, but like let's just let ourselves feel it now. So I think so. And I wanted to say the way that I've posed it, just because of this age still today, not even quite five next in the next couple months, is that I say, and I think this is so helpful for anyone navigating this space around specifically mental wellness and suicide, is that I say, yeah, Laddie Clint's brain was sick, he and he took too much medicine, and he and his body died. And then of course this applies to whatever your belief system is, but for me, my belief system is his body died, but his spirit's still there and he's connected to your heart. And you've seen him in dreams, and he's like, well, I went in a dream tonight. I'm like, well, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And it does immensely help for my personal situation. That
It must be quite tricky because obviously at that age, the language isn't necessarily there to express, how he's feeling. So how did you manage those moments of trying to work out what he needs in certain times, while also sort of managing your own emotions and maybe sadness or other emotions like regret or all those things that come up when things like this happen?
well, I thought of a time, Mother's Day 2023, was in the car with Leo. We were picking up a Target order, and just it was about to be 1:11 p.m., which actually his birthday was January 11th. So sometimes when I see 1:11, I feel like it's a reminder for me to, if I'm thinking of that or if it's on my mind and I see the number, it's like, oh, okay. And in that time, it wasn't necessarily all like fluffy feelings of honoring or forgiveness. It was like, actually, I feel a little bit angry. Like, so basically, in his words, in an appropriate way, of course, not in an adult way, I'm just like, yeah, there were some times when Daddy Clint wasn't very nice to me, and I felt a little mad just now remembering that. But then I saw at the time, which is a special number, and then I felt, which is true, I felt him come in spiritually and say, I'm sorry, which is really what I felt, because I felt really angry, and I'm proud of myself because I let myself feel it just privately myself. And then I looked and saw the clock, and then I could feel, and I softened, and I was like, okay, I think that's you saying I'm sorry. and I could tell that he kind of got it, but kids are cool where they sometimes are like, okay, and they don't have to say much. So that's basically what he did. Yeah, that felt so good. And just to be able to tell Leo in a very not big deal way, just like, yeah, like, and because I'm sure, especially as time unfolds, he'll really, especially as he becomes like a young adult and I reveal more, he'll, understand that. And maybe as he even gets into his own relationships one day. And so be able to have him just really see all parts of me. Something I talk about with my husband Garrett now is like, it's really important to keep his memory alive and share how his life was lived versus like just focus on how his life ended, and all parts of it, like the good and the challenge. And that's been really cool for me. So it just, there's really no rules. I'd say, to come back to your question would be that I thankfully have a lot of tools. So I'd say if if someone doesn't feel like they have tools to process the emotions, then a few that help me, and then there's so many more out there that you can be guided to yourself, is just simply journaling. Oh my goodness. That's why writing was so key for me. If you're not feeling called to or don't feel like you have anyone else to talk to, journaling, of course, if it's accessible and what you are called to, counseling and therapy, absolutely. Actually, have a amazing authorship client who would be happy I'm sharing this, Melissa Kayam. She just published a book called Daily Practices, a Mindfulness Companion. And in there, she has so many different tools. And one of them that I loved was art therapy. And I think it's key, even if you don't identify as an artist, but if it's a Sharpie or a pencil or a pen, or if you have other kinds of artistic tools, sometimes just scribbling. And if there's like, there's something in there, but the tears aren't coming, because sometimes we want to cry and it doesn't come. And so just scribbling. And so that's things that I have slowly started to do with my son too. And so, yeah, I'd say he hasn't been crying with me as much lately, as I feel like he started to like accept it as a part of his being, that like he still asks, even recently asked, like, why, it's like, where is heaven? Like, he's looking up at the sky. I'm like, well, I don't really know. I think it's probably like in the sky, but we can't see it with our eyes. So he's like, and then he asked something about like, do angels need to eat food? And so, yeah, I'd say to answer the question about like being in tune with his emotions, I'd say just being able to sometimes like organically let him bring it up, because he does off and on, but sometimes finding an entry point, like sometimes certain car toys he has, I'll bring it up because his first dad loved cars, and there are certain cars like Subarus that he liked, so I'll let that be an entry point. Or when it was recently his physical birthday, be like, oh, do you know his daddy quick birthday? And or if a memory reel pops up with a picture when he was a baby, just like showing it to him, not a big deal, and expecting him to like want to go down a path with that. He'll just be like, oh, cool, and then go keep playing. So yeah, I'd say that's a long-winded answer for what you asked.
No, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned briefly about your books. If you'd like to go into more sort of detail about them, because I think you've got children's books as well, haven't you? Which kind of
I
go into how
do.
to deal with grief.
Yeah, and that's what's most exciting. So yeah, I'll definitely share about my books here, and the purpose and why for me, with our author collective and publishing company, Author Catalyst Academy, is that really everyone's story matters. Your story matters, my story matters, our story as a collective matters. And so yeah, my first book in 2020 is called Cosmic. It's a story of 20 women, of 7 women who unveil an ultimate truth for humanity, and they're all represented by different colors of the rainbow. And we have some really awesome sacred dresses and other products that go along with that book. I created 2 children's books recently that have been super fun. One is a coloring book and awesome story of this infinite blob. His name's Blob the Infinite, and he's basically this blob of infinite dust and stars that explores the cosmos, and then one day kind of starts getting bored with being infinite and wants to experience being just like finite like we are. And so it's like kind of like a one fun version of a creation story, but it's also a coloring book, and the book is also repeated without words, so the kids can create their own words and ways to interpret it. And then my other children's book is related to my history hat that I wear, and it's a real true story of woven through science fiction of Lucky the horse, who's a saddle display horse at our museum that I'm director at. And he actually floated down the river 15 miles when a major flood happened in Pueblo, Colorado, the flood of 1921. And despite being made out of paper mache, he was used to display saddles at the time, barely got damaged, and was found at the top of a tall tree. and
Wow.
became a symbol of hope and resilience for the city at that point that was healing from a mass tragedy. Speaking of, healing from individual tragedy, like think of it as a collective scale of loss. And then he also survived a major fire in the 1980s and later got the name Lucky from a little girl. And so we wrote a book called Lucky to Be Alive, which is visualizing a young girl coming to our museum and then sci-fi style falling back in time and re-experiencing the flood and meeting heroes like the telephone operators who stayed at their post while the water's rising up their feet. And these women saved hundreds of lives, calling people downriver. And she meets lots of other heroes who help people and comes back to the present day with a renewed sense of gratitude for life, feeling lucky to be alive, and also just feeling grateful for the people who've come before us and all that they sacrificed for us to be here, and creating just a sense of like excitement around history too for young people. So we can, of course, build our future, but ways we can do that consciously is by being aware of like our past and where our ancestors came from. And so, and then my most favorite mini tiny book is a book called Mini Book of Word Magic. And it's a short book that is 111 affirmations and declarations. I wrote it in honor of Suicide Awareness Month this past year, 2023, which is September. And basically, it's just a list of affirmations and declarations that had come through for me that helped me when I just need to shift my energy. And then a whole bunch of blank pages for people to also write their own. And so that's what's really exciting is, just all these books.
And where can we connect with you online? Where can we find out more about what you're doing and what you're up to?
And you can find me at Doe Renee everywhere on most platforms. Just DoeRenee, Doe Renee. That's usually my handle, as well as my link tree, which is at Doe Renee as well.
Before I let you go, though, I just wondered if you could maybe say one or two things to maybe help somebody who is supporting a child, a young person through really complex emotions, a tragedy that might have happened. What would be something that you can tell us that we can take away from all this?
I want it to be something unique, but what comes through is the typical phrase of "this too shall pass." And I remember that helping me a lot in the very thick of the challenge, when I was still just feeling rooted in the loss of like, yeah, this too will pass. And then of course, like if anyone out there is going through that and also feelings of like, gosh, how do I even go on? How can I go on? Just know that there's someone there, even if it's not yourself for yourself at that moment, there's someone there that you either know or you can find that can help you and will listen to you. There is always someone, even if it feels like, because I know there's situations where, you don't feel like you have the listening ear or someone to support you through that. Definitely seeking out whether it is professional or friends or others that can be a space. And then knowing that you are the most powerful space. I guess my unique advice in a quote would be, you are your own best healer. You are your own best healer. And there were just a few times during today's podcast where I really felt that, and I was grateful for that actually. But there was a time when, this all first happened, it was just like impossible for me to not, really sob. And now I'm just really accepting that everything happens for a reason, even the most challenging stuff. So I think that's another quote is just, gosh, even though it doesn't make sense now and you may feel angry and guilty and sad or whatever, or if it's similar to my situation, you might have survivor guilt, might feel like, what could I have done? How could I have made this better? How could I have stopped this? In due time, you'll see the higher purpose. Seeing him is, and me is like, this is our opportunity to have a level of connection with people through experience. So that way we can just all grow and learn together.
Well, thank you for sharing those really beautiful words with us. And thank you for giving your time. Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with me today.
Thank you so much. Really grateful for people like you bringing new conversations in the realm of like parenting and growing with our young people. How can I ask you really quick what inspired you to
Yes.
start your podcast?
Do you know what? I've been wanting to do it for many, many years. And it's only last year I thought, you know what, now's the time. I really wanted to speak to women from all walks of life and to take all the lessons that they've learned and have a central place from it so other women can learn from it. So that was really my catalyst for it. And then when I became a mother, women supporting women, mothers supporting, mothers, because it's one thing going through life as a woman, but when you add children into the mix, it's a whole other sort of dimension. So I just really love talking to different women and learning from them all the lessons that they've learned so I can take it on my sort of journey as well.
Absolutely. I love that so much. That's exactly in alignment with this, what I call like this more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, which is a quote from author Charles Eisenstein. And in this more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, it's not toxic competition, it's supporting each other, it's seeing that my journey is your journey. And thank you so much for hearing me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.